Since 1950, we have been writing footnotes to Lord's work. But along came Bob Mislevy, who took the mantle and raised the bar to new heights, provided fresh directions to measurement, and delivered a scholarly and creative spin to our world, and we've been writing footnotes to Bob's work since. Thanks, Bob. You have left another huge hole, but a whole huge contribution.
And obviously, intellectually, Bob was a major figure in our field, and he influenced the thinking of people in many different disciplines that crossed with educational measurement and assessment on a variety of fronts. In most recent years, certainly on evidence-centered design, principled assessment design, social cultural or social cognitive thinking around assessment, and of course also Bayesian networks and very technical issues in this earlier part of his career. But I know that to me, I'm a very humanistic person. The legacy that someone leaves behind is more the humanistic part of it. And so I know that Bob, through who he was and how he interacted with other people, he leaves behind a tremendous legacy and such a huge gap in the lives of many, certainly his family. And I just want to say I miss him dearly. I'm really so sorry that you're all without him. And I hope that he'll be remembered fondly for many, many, many years to come. And as we say in the north, in Hamburg, where I'm from, wherever you are, Bob, I wish you always have strong wind behind your sails. I really loved you as a colleague and as a person, and all the best to everyone in the extended circle.
Anyone who's ever worked with Bob will know the pattern. The lightning flashes of insight, the breathtaking mathematical ability, the time taken to make sure the work has a single voice, no matter how many contributors. Working with Bob was a gift. But so too are the photos and emails sent about his 3 grandchildren, grandsons Luke and twins, Alex and Elliot, about his visits with his daughters Jessica and Meredith. There were stories of Christmas dinners in D.C., Luke beaming in a high chair, photos of Elliot with his glasses on the first day of second grade. Grandkids are lovely, he wrote to me in the fall of 2002. It's such a joy to behold. In our last call together, we talked about publishing photos taken by Robbie, his beloved wife, who passed in November of 2022. While teaching in Lawrenceville, New Jersey, the school my children attended many years ago, Robbie made the time to travel throughout the United States, in the national parks, and in Europe. There were grayscale photographs, a man on a bike pedaling slowly down a wet road, color photographs of seagulls, wings spread wide, descending from a blue sky, perhaps coming from or going toward heaven.
But I met Bob back in 2004 when I joined the Cisco Networking Academy project he was working on. And I had come from the world of school psychology, which is measurement adjacent, but not deep in that space. And I was lucky enough that I got to be in every other week meetings with Bob as he talked us through evidence-centered design and how we might apply it in this new computer networking world. And I will admit, I didn't get it on the first or second or maybe third time. So we went through domain models and task models and evidence models. But Bob was so kind, and I can still hear him saying, that's one way to look at it, when really he should have said, you are entirely wrong and should do it this way. We ended up building some performance-based assessments using a simulation tool that even now, all these years later, I think would still be called innovative and are still used by thousands and thousands of students in the Cisco Networking Academy. And I got to continue my relationship with Bob, working on building SimCity EDU together, and got to meet game designers from EA and think about how the worlds of game design and assessment might come together. Lots of lessons learned, and lucky enough to document a lot of those in shared publications and presentations. And finally, it isn't really those kinds of tangible things that I value most when I look back on our collaboration. It really is just his humanity and all of the things that he taught us with his patience and his ability to just continually work through problems till we all got to solutions together. I am so grateful for my time working with Bob and thankful for all that he's taught all of us.
It is an honor to contribute a brief comment recognizing Bob's incredible range of contributions, advancing the scope and relevance of assessment tied to current notions of human performance as situated action. His orienting contributions in this area are amply developed in his seminal volume, Sociocognitive Foundations of Educational Measurement. Above all, Bob shows immense and pervasive sensitivity to the complexity of human embodied learning and patterned ways of knowing and doing, and their instantiation in everyday practices lived out in human projections of identities and settings. Bob used the term linguistic, cultural, and substantive patterns to refer to this matter, and his collaborative work on assessment evidence-centered design helped educational stakeholders to argue their scientific case for using assessments, tasks, and measurements as valid measures of learner competence. The importance of this contribution to assessment theory and practice cannot be understated. Rather than narrow the limits of assessment to a quest for finding the ideal or correct theories and models for assessments, it opened up the field of assessment so as to make it an explicit ongoing dialogue among stakeholders with diverse points of view that could be contested by the scientific method, yet showing openness to the legitimate consideration of ethical and social justice concerns that cannot inherently be reduced to science alone. Thank you kindly.
It's hard to overstate the impact your work has had on my understanding of measurement and what we are all seeking to do by constructing and justifying assessment instruments. In the months since your passing, I have found myself deeply grateful for the legacy you have left us to follow, and frequently overwhelmed with sadness that we have lost such a great mind and compassionate human.
For all his scholarly accomplishments, and these are truly incredible, I think anyone who interacted with Bob will most remember him for his kindness and his willingness to help others. When I was starting out as an assistant professor, I was teaching my first graduate level course. I was teaching on response theory. I was trying to work through an example of person parameter estimation using bylaws at the time. And the results I was getting were making no sense. I just couldn't figure out why. I was really banging my head against the wall. And finally, in desperation, I decided to email Bob just out of the blue. And we'd been introduced when I was a graduate student, but he really just barely knew me. But within an hour of getting my email, he'd written me back with a perfectly clear explanation for what was puzzling me. And the way he wrote it made me feel like I'd actually made this really insightful discovery. And he was thrilled that I had taken the time to share it with him. I really never forgot about that. To this day, I try to use that as a model and do my best to pay his kindness forward whenever I interact with junior scholars. So Bob, I'll always remember that, and I'll always miss your kindness and strength of character. You'll be missed.
Bob, my hero and my friend. Whenever somebody asks me who my heroes are, your name is always one of the first ones I say. We met back in the mid 1980s. Two different minds chasing the same kinds of truths. We were working on intelligent tutoring systems in labs and in classrooms, and then crossing paths at conferences all around the world. I was in awe of you then, and I'm still in awe today. So over the decades, interestingly, we worked at some of the same places, but never at the same time. So, for example, I came to ETS, I think about a month after you had left. And when I left ETS to go to FSU, you returned to ETS. So I'm hoping that that was correlational and not causal. But in any case, you gave all of us so much more than theories or frameworks. Your work on ECD just made my own work possible. And the stealth assessments that I built into games stand on the shoulders of your quiet genius. But it wasn't just your brilliant mind that I admired. It was your kindness and your patience and that rare gift of making everybody want to rise. You never forgot that behind every test and every score, there's a human being, a story worth telling, and always in some context. So now I'm here, missing you deeply, searching for words that are bright enough to hold your legacy, and trying real hard not to cry. So maybe it's enough to simply say, you shaped not just how I think, but who I strive to be. I was very, very lucky to have known you. So rest well, my friend, my hero, my colleague. Your light lives on in every mind that you have touched and every heart that you inspired.
Perhaps one of my most enduring memories of Bob is actually reading his book on sociocognitive models of assessment. I won't lie, the book was a slog. It took me over a month of dedicated reading time every day to work through each chapter, to really get a rich understanding of what argument he was building in the book, and what the implications of that argument was for the future of assessment. Very humbling, I think, work to make sense of all of that work and that complexity. And so I felt like I really lived with Bob during that time. It's been a real joy since reading that work, working with Bob on our last publication, which came out just a few months ago, which really built off of those ideas and applied them to the field of writing assessment. As we really thought about how do linguistic, cultural, and substantive patterns present themselves in assessment design and in assessment data. I know Bob was sort of excited to sort of see the application of these ideas in real case studies, and I can imagine that that work will be a major focus for me and my colleagues moving forward. Profoundly grateful to have got to know Bob and to have shared some time with him. His loss is deeply felt, both personally, but I know within the broader community as well.
I've been a collaborator of Bob for many years, perhaps 15 years. We did together a large project on game-based assessment, and then we collaborated together with Zhang Hao and edited a volume on computational psychometrics. Throughout this time, I was always impressed and admired the way Bob supported all of us, shared his wisdom with all of us, found the time to meet with us, and perhaps the most important part, how incredibly, what an incredible collaborator he was. He would ask questions that would make us feel that we actually found the response, the result, and that we achieved what we were looking for. But all along, he was a partner of conversation, truly in a Socratic way. And it was also an experience that made me consider paying it forward and mentoring junior researchers and students and interns for the rest of my life. So it's incredibly sad that he's not with us anymore. And just recently, I've been thinking about a book that, together with Wan Lian, another good friend of Bob, I'm editing, and we were talking about how wonderful it would be to have him on board and have some of the theoretical underpinning of assessment, especially now assessment with AI, be discussed by Bob. Thank you all for putting this together, and let's all think of the good times that we had with Bob.
It's hard to sum up his influence, his kindness, mentorship, and vision continue to guide me. I'm committed to carrying forward the work We did together, building better, more instructionally useful, personalized assessments, and to pay it forward, to inspire new generations of learners, psychometricians that would want to embrace his wonderful work. I'm thankful for these experiences, for the wonderful work that Bob did.
Bob was a towering figure, not just for his technical brilliance, but for his capacity for intellectual friendship and boundary-crossing collaborations with others. At a time when honesty, caring, and intellectual rigor are in ever shorter supply, Bob's work is a beacon toward a better future. Today, it is an ethical imperative that we keep his ideas alive. I know we will all miss Bob. I know I will miss him dearly, but his contributions were seminal. Thank you.
Bob was an incredible teacher, not just through his person, but also through his writings. I think evidence-centered design has become such a force and framework for the field, in part because Bob was good at articulating its principles and pathways and providing powerful examples of what it can do. It's not too much to say that through his argument-based approach, which is deeply rooted in concepts from the philosophy of social science, it has transformed the field. We are indebted to you, who follow imperfectly in your footsteps, and have much to do yet to create and build within the landscape you have painted for us. Your memory is already a blessing to us and to your family, and may it be so for generations.
When I think of Bob Mislevy, I think of someone who really changed my mind. You see, I don't think of myself as an assessment researcher or an assessment person, but Bob was just so compelling and so clear about evidence-centered design. He made it so exciting, and it was like a grand intellectual game to be part of. And he was so inviting and collaborative and made me feel valued and really part of what he was doing, even though I was not really a big part of it. And just made me want to be an assessment person. And yeah, he really just shaped how I think about so many things from his view of evidence-centered design, and it's a framework I'll always carry with me. Miss you a lot, Bob.
Bob has always been a role model. I never told him explicitly that he was one, but when I first met him, I admired greatly his ability to be kind and gracious at the same time that, from a research perspective, he could be incisive and have deep thoughts that needed to be shared, sometimes discussed. And his ability to combine all of that was enough to impact much of my work throughout my life. But later on, he became one of the small handful of deeply knowledgeable theoretical psychometricians who was equally impactful with regard to social issues, viewing the test development process as well as the statistical analysis of the results, and in all having a much greater impact for having a much fuller picture and for teaching others to have that full picture also. Bob, you'll be missed. Thank you for having been a part of my life.
The first time I heard Bob Mislevy's name was a few months before I actually met him. It was toward the end of 1983, and I was taking a workshop at ETS on item response theory. I remember the room, PO16, in the old program building, later Anrick Hall, now gone. The workshop organizer, Martha Stocking, came into the seminar room one morning in a particularly effusive and excited mood. She said, "We've just hired a rising star to work on our IRT research. His name is Bob Mislevy." So even as a relatively young researcher, his reputation was already preceding him. I did get to know and work with him on various projects over the ensuing 42 years, so I had many opportunities to watch him grow and to learn from him, which I did every chance I got. From his landmark contributions to NAEP, to the beginnings of evidence-centered design, to his applications of it in various performance assessment projects, to the Sociocultural Foundation's book, he proved himself to be unique in his ability to take ideas from other fields and apply them in new and novel ways, bringing new, sometimes radically new, thinking to educational measurement. As outstanding and groundbreaking as his many accomplishments were, they were more than matched in my eyes by his humility, his kindness, his generosity, his collegiality, and his decency. He was a scholar and a gentleman in every sense of those words. I am going to miss him greatly.
The last thing I want to say about Bob is he was just fun and he was funny. He was so sharp intellectually and he could kind of cut through a lot of the noise going on in a context. And he was just funny as heck to be around. I remember once I was talking to him about a paper and would it be duplicative if we wrote it this way or that. And he said, well, there's an old expression in vaudeville, it's easier to get a new audience than a new act. And he just kind of summed it all up in this funny quip. Bob was a great friend. He did so much for me. He taught me so much about the industry and about being an adult in the industry. I was 39 when we met, but he had a huge impact on how I thought about myself and what I could do in the world and where I fit in the world. And I owe so much to him as a friend and a mentor. And as with all of you, I have missed him and I will miss him. And we've all been better for Bob being in this world. God bless you all.